Hey y'all,
What's going on, everyone?
I'm Jay,
And I'm Chris the Bird Nerd.
and we
We are
are the
the Bird
Bird
Brains.
Brains.
Boom, boom, cha. I like it.
And we're back at it again.
We are back in black, or something like that.
Back in black.
we
All right,
so I at my work conference I just got back from. I had to speak, and one of my teammates there. We've got a pretty good little dialogue there, but they did the Bad Boys Cops theme song from back in the day.
yeah,
As like my intro as I was walking up. It wasn't planned. They just like put it up to the speaker, and like this is like 200 people of leaders. And like, come on, guys, set a bad example.
that's so funny.
It's very funny though.
Oh, in high school, I had to take a public speaking class, which, I mean, we public speak like we're. It doesn't bother
Yeah,
me. I'm not shy.
yeah.
But so, and I should have, I got an A in the class, but I didn't take it like super intensely because I was like, I'm good at speaking. This doesn't, like, I'm not saying I'm good at everything, but that it doesn't scare me to speak in front of people. And so they said you could do, it was like, there was a speech at the end of the year. There was like a free form. You could do whatever you want. So I gave, and it had to be 5 minutes long. So I gave a speech on how to lip sync. I guess it had to be instructional. So I did how to lip sync. So I did 2 minutes on lip syncing, and then I lip synced the whole Whitney Houston song for the other 3 minutes. Got an A. Got an A.
I love it.
But
That's
it
awesome.
was so funny because like it would have been funny if I'd done it for 30 seconds, but I just did the whole song and just like never broke character,
Never
just
missed a
lip
beat,
sync
man.
the whole
I love
time.
it. That's awesome. Good old Whitney
Yeah.
Houston. We used to listen. She used to be on the playing in the house quite a bit growing up. My dad was a big fan of
Yeah.
Whitney Houston. So
My wife loves Whitney. R.I.P. Don't
yeah,
do drugs,
yeah,
kids.
yeah,
Don't do
exactly.
drugs. Um, Killer pipes though. Killer pipes on
Yeah,
Whitney.
beautiful voice.
All right. So, and there's a here. I'm gonna watch this segue, Chris. An important mistake that Whitney made was a bad choice in pair selection. Bobby Brown was not good for Whitney. And today,
With
what are we
devastating
talking about?
results. We're
Yeah.
we're talking about letting your birds, if you let them choose their own mates, or if you choose them for them. And we're going to talk about both sides of the coin and the pros and cons of those, and what we typically try to do with our birds and the benefits from it. That's what we're going to shoot out today.
The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. Bird Brains, Bird Brains. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. The Bird Brains Podcast with Chris and Jay. Bird Brains, Bird Brains.
All right. Before we get into pair selection, let's talk about our sponsors. We were talking to them today. The Perch Box is
Yeah,
very close, so we're
so
getting
close, guys.
some final supply orders in, things like that. And we'll be doing, I guess we have been doing, but there'll be some official non-podcast promo videos that we're going to have to work on here in the next few weeks, which means we're going to have to figure out how to do a promo video. But what we've already figured out is how to save you 10% if you go to New Zealand and you use code BirdBrains. And what could you find if you did that, Chris?
Anything you want. They have done a great job creating a one-stop shop, all things nutrition, toys, cages, treats, you name it, nest boxes. They've really gone out of their way to create a platform where you can choose anything for your birds, large or small. They've done a great job, and they're continuously adding products to that, bouncing ideas back and forth off of us and other folks to make sure that they're providing the best products possible for us. So yeah, use that code BirdBrains, get that 10% off. I'm like, why not, right? They've got very competitive prices for their items that they have on their website. And if you get an additional discount, I call it a win-win.
Yeah, I scoped out a bird store last week. I don't want to say who it is because I don't want to trash talk, but I was looking at they had some Hagen Gourmet in there, and they have it for $15 a bag, and New Zealand has it for $10 a bag. Plus, you get 10% off, which basically cancels out your shipping.
Yep.
So they've got good prices on the best stuff. So it's, to
Yeah,
me, that's a no-brainer.
absolutely. Yeah, and it's my pet store. They're a good pet store actually. But high end expenses, that same product, Jay, 17.99. Like expensive.
Yeah, yeah. Between that and the cold weather, I will not be moving to Utah.
Yeah, we had snow
Um,
this morning. Woke up to snow this morning. That's why I got the hoodie
80
on.
degrees.
I just want to snuggle up in a blanket and go to sleep because I'm cold and it's all nasty weather outside and dark. So
I have shorts on. It was 80 today. I was feeding my birds about 9 a.m. It was getting a little hot. It was nice.
how would that
Um,
be?
yeah, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know over
No,
there.
no.
No. Yeah, it's okay. I haven't seen a mountain in years. All right. So pair selection. I guess let me ask you this first, Chris. Do you feel strongly one way or the other? Like, are you I always pick or they always pick?
No. But I'll start with this. The quality of birds that we have now has come from selective breeding, which means the breeder chose the male and female and paired them together. I would probably say 98% of the time. There's probably a few pairs along the line that they just let pair up and the odds aligned and they produce some good genetics. I try really hard to only bring in good genetic birds. I do like the good size birds. I think they're beautiful. I look for colors. So when I'm getting my Gouldian finches and others, I'm looking for certain color dynamics and genetic traits. And if I have a good group of what I would consider a good genetically solid flock of birds or group of birds, I'm more inclined to let them choose their own mates. But when it comes down to certain colors that you're wanting to breed, certain sizes that you're wanting to breed, I do believe that it is beneficial to individually select those pairs. For the most part, majority of your birds that are in captivity, your Australian birds, they'll pair up with anyone that you select for them most of the time. Uh, I feel like your African majority of your African finches as well, they breed pretty readily. It's just keeping the babies alive. But there are some species of birds out there that are really picky on their mates. If and once they've chosen a mate, and you separate them from those mates, they won't mate. They won't pair up again with someone else, especially if they can still see or
I
hear
was gonna
their
say,
mate.
especially if the other mate's around.
Right. And so, gosh, it's tricky for me. I've done both this year. I don't think I actually my starfinches I selected individually all of my pairs and put them together. My Gouldian finches, I let them breed colony. Zebra finches, I let them breed colony. My Amadina finches, I did pair those ones up individually. My Borks, I paired up individually because I wanted specific colors and traits. So I do a mix of both of them, and I've seen there's benefits, pros and cons of both of them. I know there's going to be a lot of people out there that may not like that I individually choose those pairs, and it may be a pairing this year and next year. Maybe I get a different bird in, or offspring from another pair has some awesome traits, and maybe the next year I don't pair up those same birds again, per se, but I still have really good success rates. My birds aren't moping around and mad that I haven't paired them up. One thing I will do as well, Jay, is I've got both flights divided. So wintertime, I've got all males on one side, all females on the other side.
Mm.
When we come into springtime, I sit out and I watch my birds as they interact through the wires, and they'll select their mates. And if it's something that I like, I'll specifically pair those ones up. and they'll breed faster for me. They're usually better parents, and because they've naturally selected each other, which is great. And so that is something that I do try to watch for if I'm going to breed them in a cage and not just in the aviary. I try to do that, and specifically with my Goulian finches, I do that once my females have chosen a male, and I put them in together. I mean, they are so quick to go to breed because they've already selected each other. If it's a pairing that I choose and they haven't necessarily chosen each other, it'll take a couple weeks for them to kind of get things going and start breeding. But they will eventually breed for me. But how about you, Jay? What kind of methods do you use or practices when it comes to
Yeah,
breeding?
I've done it both ways. I've just like you, I've had some that I've selected, and I do want to say here, disclaimer, I'm super tired. It's super late. This is LaCroix. I feel like I've been yawning and stuff. Sober, just tired. When I'm on the road, like I am right now, there are good chances I'm really tired. So I've done it both ways. I As a general rule, I don't have the divided aviary. I don't have the space. I would in the future certainly consider that, at least for certain species, especially species that, like your zebra finches, that you can't stop from breeding, or my society finches right now. I've pulled all
Right.
my nests, and except for the last, I think I'm down to three, and I've got society finches just constantly trying to lay in food bowls now, and I'm disassembling their nests every day and physically talking to finches. I'm sure I look like a crazy person trying to explain to a finch that
you,
you can't
you
do
gotta
that.
stop.
Yeah, but so um, I have settled on sort of a hybrid method, I think is how I would call it. So I colony breed as a general rule. I have two big, one big aviary and then another big flight. Separate those out. The big aviary is pretty much a free for all. When breeding season starts, I get all the birds in a breeding condition. I put in way more nest boxes than I have pairs. My general rule is like 2.5 nest boxes per pair. So, for instance, if you had 50 pairs, you put in 75 nest boxes. I don't have 50, but just for math explanation, the what I mean by the hybrid method is usually I don't acquire multiple pairs from the same place. Usually, the way it's
Yeah.
worked out for me is okay, I've got a pair of stars. Now I got to go find another pair of stars. So when I get in that second pair, or even they might even happen one, two, three, four. And I try to have at least two pairs of each species. Some I have, like Gouldians, I have like 10 or 12 pairs. Mask grass finches and shaft tails, I have four pairs each. But same thing applies.
Yeah.
The way it generally works is because I had that first pair and they've already paired, even if I add a third one, they'll be paired. And then when I add the fourth one, they'll automatically pair. So I keep that in mind. And then the other way I've done it is let's say I have, four young birds, and I know that I want these two to pair and these two to pair. After that last bird is done with its quarantine and hypothetically could go into the aviary, instead, I'll pull the bird I want it to pair with, let them hang out in the cage for 2 weeks, and then release them into the aviary. And I find by that time, usually bird A and B will have paired, and now bird C and D will say, well, they're already paired. We were together. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
But as a general rule, I like to let them pick because of the speed of it. It's more natural. I'm a big natural behavior guy. I'd want to see as much natural
Right.
behavior as possible. I also think, as a general rule, like the competition of like, well, they're breeding, we should breed, is a
Hmm.
is beneficial.
Yeah.
But like you said, bird breeding has come a long way, and the quality of the birds we have, not universally, but generally, is really great compared
Right.
to even what I saw 20 years ago. I mean, Gouldians 20 years ago were super fragile, super small, only a couple colors. It's not how it is anymore. And in Europe, and I'll give Europe a lot of the credit for this, they mostly cage breed in Europe, which means they're mostly selecting mates, and the bloodlines coming out of Europe, if you can just inject a couple European size, health, genetic birds into your bloodlines every couple years, you will get great birds from the colony breeding.
Yep, I agree. It's funny. I've got European bloodlines in quite a few of my bird species, like my zebra finches, my Gulian finches, and earlier this year I had a person that was getting rid of they had one zebra finch and they reached out and said, "Hey, can you take this zebra finch and give it a good home?" And I said, "Sure." So we brought in and it was just your normal. It was a chestnut flanked white, so your white zebra finch, and it was a hen. And I put it out after quarantine. I put it out in the aviary, and it was half the size of all of my birds. And it just so just those European bloodlines and really breeding in that size has made a huge difference. And it was crazy to see the comparison of the two. And so I do think there are times where I would agree that it is warranted, selective breeding. And if you're breeding for competitions and awards that are based off of size and color and certain traits of birds, I think that's where you have to select breed. My zebra finches that I have now, I specifically tried to bring in several, like the orange breasted and orange faced birds and black breasted. So I brought in several different pairs from several different states, and I let them free breed this year, and I've held on to only about 5% of the babies just because they breed so much. But I'm going to let them mature, and as they color out and mature this winter, I will probably be selective breeding them next year because I want to draw out certain colors and traits from them with the more orange or the more black on their bellies, things like that. So I will be intentional on how I pair them up going into the future. So, but yeah, I think there's benefits, there's pros and cons to it. I would say they're on the opposite end. There are birds that may not have good traits. Sometimes they can have missing toes, or they have feather issues, or they have color issues. I purposely try to not breed those birds because that's not something that I want to continue breeding. I want to breed healthy birds, strong genetics, and if the birds do not have those traits, I will not incorporate them into my breeding program. And so that I would say there's an opposite spectrum to that, Jay, making sure that we're responsible there and promoting healthy breeding, whether we're selective breeding or just letting them breed freely, but making sure that if there are traits and qualities that are not desirable and shouldn't be with the birds, which is usually due to inbreeding or poor breeding before, making sure that we're not continuing those breeding lines and weakening the genetics of those birds down the road.
I was going to say that was my last point is there are two situations where I would always selectively breed. I would always pick the pairs. If you have multiple generations of the same genetics, so for instance, if you have two pairs, you have two hens and two males, but one of the males is the offspring of the other pair, that'd be a good reason during breeding season to separate that one and the other hen to
Yeah.
ensure that you're not getting any inbreeding. And then the other one, if you're having like a hybridization problem, if you have, let's say, shaft tails and zebra finches and you can't get the shaft tail hen to stop letting the zebra finch male sneak over in the night, which happens,
Yes, it
that's
does.
another really good time to separate them and
Right.
say, no, no, this is your guy, right? So, I mean, I think that about covers it. This is definitely not some things we talk about, it's like, don't ever do this, or you can always do this. This is somewhere in between. It's using your experience, your knowledge, what you learn from us, what you learn from other people, doing your homework, help you make the right decisions
Right.
with regards to this. But I'm not going to tell you you're right or wrong, whether you do it one way or the other. I don't think either one is wrong or right, depending on what you're trying to do, with the maybe the exception of what we talked about with the genetics and a few other things. But overall, um, if you've got a big mixed aviary, you've got multiple pairs of the same species, maybe mix and match, do what you think's right. If you're breeding overall healthy birds, then you'll get overall healthy babies.
Right. Yep,
So
I agree. And there's going to be breeders out there that may disagree with us, Jay, that they feel strongly one way or another. I think there's scenarios and circumstances that one way or the other way is better. And I think we'll leave that up to everyone to choose what you want to do best for your birds. I would also say my last thing, Jay, and we'll wrap this up, is when you get into certain colors of birds and mutation of birds came about from inbreeding.
blueback Goulians is the big
Blueback
example.
Goulians, right? Breeding siblings together, or sons and daughters back to their parents, right? So to breed those colors or that size, I mean that is something that's a result of all of our genetics that we have now, mutations and size is somewhere along the line that happened. I do not encourage that. I say there are experts out there, and a lot of our European birds, though I would say a lot of those breeders were experts and are experts. If you're not an expert in breeding, don't inbreed. Don't breed the siblings together. Don't breed uh, sons and daughters back to the parents to see what happens. Like that's not responsible. If you truly are an expert and know what you're doing, I think there's more wiggle room there, but we're trying to keep our genetics as pure as we can. So stay away from that piece of it unless you've got years and years of experience and understand traits and genetics and what's going into what and how. But if not, if like Jay said, you got a cage of babies, by the time they're mature, make sure you got them separated so they're not inbreeding and we're muddying up the genes and weakening them. And it just causes issues down the road, feather issues, health issues, you name it. And so just be smart in that area. And I would discourage that from anyone doing that
Yeah,
in a
I
responsible
would
manner.
second that. As a general rule, I either keep the parents or I keep the babies. I don't keep both.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would second you on that. I think you said it well. That's exactly right. Don't If you're gonna play God, be a benevolent God. Don't get weird with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
All right.
KJ,
If
how can they get a hold of you if they want some more questions on how to breed their birds?
All right, I'm on YouTube, obviously. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. All the Javiary or the underscore Javiary. That's Jayviary. I'm also on Threads, which sucks, and I'm on Reddit. So get in the comments, tell us what you're doing, shoot us a DM if you have a question. We're happy to help. All right, what about you, Chris?
Love it, man. Yeah, reach out to me. YouTube and Facebook is Bird Nerd. Instagram is Bird Nerd 4. So please reach out if you got questions. I'd be happy to help you. I'm not shipping anymore because we are officially into winter, at least for this period. But if you're around locally or coming into the state of Utah, reach out to me. I still do have birds that I'm looking to sell. So, and or if you just have questions or want to get to know me better, reach out. We've had all the above these last few weeks, and I've enjoyed every one of them. So,
Yeah, I am still shipping for a few more weeks. I've got diamond doves out the wazoo ready to go. Please buy my diamond doves. I've got a couple button quail if you needed that to happen. And then it looks like I'm going to have some shaft tails here at the end. So if you're looking for those three species, let me know. May also have a Gouldian or two available. We'll see. I've got a couple people on the list. We'll see how that goes. But other than that, thanks for listening. Catch you all in the next one.
see you guys.